Hey fams, I believe, okay, believe I'm live. All right, yes, I believe I'm live on most places. So hello, hello, hello. Super excited to be back. Of course, always something technologically speaking, but that's okay. We'll keep it moving. We're doing book club, y'all. Hopefully this doesn't disappear too much. You can see Orange is the New Black is the book that so we're having some digitalization happening. I We'll get it working. That's okay, y'all. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday. If it is Sunday, wherever you are in the world, my name is Natasha Nurse. I'm excited to be back on for before the end of the month to talk about this book's month club, book club for the month. And like I said, Orange is the New Black by Piper Kerman. So if you're familiar with the show on Netflix, then this book is not going to be a surprise to you. Book is very different from the show. I haven't watched the entire all the seasons of Orange is the New Black, but I have seen some episodes and definitely different type of vibe. Still good and different, but still different. And with that, let's just jump right in to what I want to talk about for today. So let me share with you my slides, and then we're good. Okay, so we want to go this way. We want to go to this slide. There we go. All right, perfect. So we'll keep it moving. What are we going to talk about for the book club? So first, introductions, just in case you aren't familiar with who I am or what my platform is about. And then we're going to do book summary, then questions that I thought were really interesting that came to mind when I read this book this month, and then next steps. All right, so I do a lot. From this slide alone, you can see all the different outlets that I'm on. I podcast, I blog, I'm an author, I'm a podcaster, like I said, I'm a mother, I'm a DEI professional, I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I do a lot. I think everything under the overarching uh, goal of education, enlightenment, empowerment, and revitalization for whomever I'm speaking to in whatever industry they happen to be in. And so my goal is to give people content and insight on things that I love and that I'm passionate about. So whether that's feminism or that is education or that's entrepreneurship or media or dot dot dot, right? So there's a lot of different subjects I handle. And with that, let's get right into the book. So hard, it's digitizing. Okay, there. So Orange is the New Black. So there's a woman. Her name's Piper Kerman. She does a little bit of a naughty deed and ends up in prison, and that's like not so great. And from that experience, essentially, this book is a retelling or a recount of what her time in jail was, and it wasn't like a very long stint. And she makes that apparent based on kind of the other inmates that she has interactions with. But still, when you live a life of freedom and then you go to having a life not of freedom, it can be really challenging. And so, some questions that I thought would be really helpful to just talk about the subject of prison and uh, this book is the following, or are the following. So, first and foremost, what is the purpose of prison? And so, this is where I'd love to get your comments and thoughts. Feel free wherever you are. I think I'm on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm all different places. So, you can share with me kind of what your thoughts are. So when I think of what is the purpose of prison, I'm not necessarily a fan of how the prison system is run today because I think it is more punitive than it is rehabilitative, and there's different theories as to why we operate and have a prison system, but ultimately it seems like when you are, especially from this book and this recounting, is that you're going into prison, and are you spending your time thinking the most about like what you could have done differently so you didn't end up there? I don't know. I think that there's a lot of time and attention that's paid to how do I survive the experience of prison? How do I get through the next day, the next hour of whatever crises and traumas that are happening within the prison system? And that to me doesn't seem like the best use of time, energy, resources. I think that there's a multitude of reasons why people end up in the prison system. It could be socioeconomic, it could be bad influences, it could be poor decision making. It could be a lack of resources. It could be a lack of understanding of how to behave and operate differently in this world. So ultimately, not necessarily a fan, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I think me and Khalil talked about this on our podcast as well. So would love, and that was an interesting episode with some interesting comments. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear some thoughts there. Do we ultimately think the prison system really works? So I would argue the fact that we have like the most amount of prisons in a first world country, and we're like running out of space and constantly having to build more, and some are privatized, some are operated from a state or federal perspective. I would argue that the abundance and surge of these spaces indicates in and of itself that we are not okay, that what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to do is not working. Because even when we put people through the system, it's not like you do your time and then society totally forgets where you're coming from, what you've done, and you can go on and you can get any job you want, that you can go and live anywhere that you want, that you don't have this past that follows behind you. So ultimately, I think there are challenges with that. And if we're going to have a system where we're saying, hey, you did the crime, you have to pay with your time, with your freedom, ... then what happens after? If we allow people if we're setting people up to be successful thereafter, then maybe I could see this system being operationally maybe flawed, but still having value. But because people have such a high preponderance of ending back up in the prison system because they get out, they can't get jobs, or they get caught up in bad systems, poor decision making, ... Is this really working? I argue no. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Put it in the comments on any of the platforms that I'm on that you're catching this on. Please share this as well if you have people in your network that are deeply passionate. So I see hubby is on. He's writing, do we have less crime since we have so many prisons, which are supposed to deter criminals? Interesting. I'd have to look at the facts. I don't know, like historically, if our crime rates have dropped in the last decade or not. One could argue, and even if it has, one could argue there's a lot of reasons why that has happened. There's some reasons regarding COVID. There's some reasons around, the wealth that has grown more so in the last decade. So it's there's a lot of different reasons, a lot of different things. Ultimately, I advocate no. If you advocate that the prison system does really work, that it does have value in our society, please share in your comments and in the comments and let me know. But with that, I'd love to pose the next question, which is, how would you react in the situation? So if you were Piper, you do a naughty deed, you get yourself caught up, you end up having to go to prison, whether it's federal or state or private, whatever the different system is. How would you react in the system or in this situation? So for me, when I was thinking about like posing this question to y'all, I was like, I think I would be terrified. I have the words fearless tattooed on my arm because I wanted a physical reminder to me every single day of my life that no matter what I go through, whatever I have to face, I have to be fearless, no matter how scary or upsetting the situation could be. But to be honest, I think I'd be scared. I think I'd be scared again, not about the fact that like, oh my gosh, what's the bigger context or the bigger situation or the bigger impact this is going to have in my life, but more so the like that in the system, like you're there, you're in this cell, it's very small, it's not necessarily the most hygienic depending upon what system you're in. And you have possibly the space by yourself or multiple people in this small box with you. How do you get on with these other people, these other inmates? How do you get on within the bigger picture of this? And then the other bigger question of how do you get on once you've done your time? How does society react to you when you go and try to apply for a job, when you try to restart your life? It just seems like so terrifying, and it doesn't seem to really set people up for success. So that would be my thoughts. I would be terrified. I would be anxious. I would be demoralized, really. And so, if you two have thoughts on that, I'd love to see. Let's see, what's it, Khalil? Prison is devastating. You lose personal liberties. Absolutely, Khalil. I agree. I totally agree. It's It's, it's challenging. It's really challenging. And for those who have gone through this, for those who are dealing with this, I'd love to hear kind of your wisdoms, your strengths that you've developed from this experience. But I think that we don't spend enough time thinking about what the experience is of people who go to prison. And so that's why I really enjoyed reading the book. I didn't necessarily is it my top 5 books to read ever? No, definitely not. But it was definitely an interesting experience. It was definitely humorous. It was definitely much different than other content I read, which I'm really grateful for, because you have to flex, especially in your reading game. You have to try new things, read new things to try to think differently and to grow and to evolve. So definitely recommend pick up a copy of the book. It's digitized. Okay, there you go. So you can check it out yourself. Okay, so what would you say is the value of sharing this experience? So if you did go to prison like Piper Kerman did, does it make sense to write a book about it? I think my answer with that would be yes, because ultimately there isn't enough content out here around the prison experience, around the school, I forget the phrase. There's like a pipeline kind of theory that there are certain, marginalized communities face having their youth go directly, essentially, from the school system into the prison system. And we do not hear enough about that. I mean, I purposely don't listen to a lot of news, so maybe it is. Maybe there is a preponderance of this on the news. For the news that I've heard, I have not necessarily heard that. But there's value to sharing your story. There's value to connecting with others near and far to you. And I would argue that if you have experienced that and you do come across this video and you feel like, you know what, I haven't shared my prison experience, or I haven't shared this trauma, that I encourage you to do that. This would be the sign for you to do that. Let's see, what is Khalil saying? He is saying something. I don't know. Join my husband in his comments, y'all. And then if you could ask the author, Piper Kerman, a question, what would you ask? So I really like questions like this, especially around authors, because they've spent so much time and energy and resources and mind, just power, trying to create this work of art. I would argue books are works of art, and it is the most intimate and then also revealing experience you can do, especially when you write a book around your story, around who you are as a person, and you're sharing that with the world, right? Not just your local town, but the world. You put everything into this, and then you don't know how it's going to land. You don't know how people are going to receive it, nor do you control that. So you have to just kind of go out there and just do what you do. I would ask Piper Kerman, I'd ask her a lot of questions, but one question I would ask her is if she could go back in time, even from the commission of the act, right? Even in the committing of the crime, would she have done anything different, right? And then I would also want to ask her, what was the greatest lesson learned being in prison and then being outside of prison? And then what would be advice that she has for someone who ends up in prison similar to her, and is terrified and is questioning what happens next, and where do you go in your life? Those would be some of the questions I would ask her. So curious to know, if you read the book, if you had questions for Piper Kerman, what would those questions be? And then also, if you have a similar experience like this, I would pose that question to the audience as well. If you could have done something different, what would that have been? And then what is life in prison then versus outside of prison? And then greatest lessons in both spaces, in both worlds. And it's kind of you go into one world when you go into prison, then you leave, and then you go into another world, which is our world, which is a whole other, one could argue, a whole other different type of prison. So depending upon what your experience is, depending upon what you're doing, depending upon the life choices you're making, anything can be a prison, right? So just keep that in mind. All right, so for September, if there's no other thoughts or questions, definitely welcome them. But I like to keep this fast and moving pace, because ultimately we got things to do, places to be, all that good jazz. September, we're going to read Can You Keep a Secret by Sophia Kinsella. I'm not sure if I said that. She's the author of Confessions of a Shopaholic. So I think this is really interesting because I saw the cover of this book, and also secrets and lies are things that fascinate me, just because like I do have such a strong like moral compass, and I really enjoy being honest, and like to a fault, even if it costs me relationships or things in life. It is what it is. I think that, you know, truth is the only safe and foundational ground you can stand on, and anything else is weak and causes issues in life, personally and professionally. So I was fascinated by the can you keep a secret, because I was like, well, what kind of secret, and where are we going with this? That's kind of the thought that came to mind for me for this book. So just have that in mind. If you want to join us, go to dressingyourmate.com. You can see on the events page when we're slated to do that. I think that's towards the end of September. So plenty of time to get the book, plenty of time to read the book and join me next month. And then if you have questions, if you want to learn more about Dress Your Mate, coaching, blogging, lifestyle, all that good jazz, go to dressyourmate.com. You'll also see all the different, like I said, press outlets I've been on, along with accessing Woken Free podcasts. So you can do that as well. So with that, I think I'm gonna shut it down. I have some things to do with the baby and the fams, but as always a real good pleasure coming on here, having fun, trying different backgrounds, digitizing. So I gotta figure this out. I gotta figure this out, y'all. But as always, it's been fun. It's been real. And I will see you next month. Have a wonderful, blessed day, and be a blessing to yourself and others, y'all. Bye.